Suppose you had a trafficking device. Then what would have been the next step?
Well, ma'am, it depends on how long the firearms stayed in the area. For instance, in many of the transactions here, the firearms never left the Phoenix area, and trackers, the battery life of a tracker is only good, depending on.
So if it didn't leave the Phoenix area, what could you charge this so-called trafficker, this law-abiding citizen there? He doesn't have a record, but he's buying many, many guns. What could you charge him with?
There's nothing to charge him with at that point. We have to prove a violation has existed, has occurred.
I just want to say, to sit in a hearing and hear people beat up on the ATF is very, very interesting to me. You sit in a Congress where the gun lobby controls the Congress of the United States. On the Republican side of the aisle, they totally control it. On my side of the aisle, they virtually control it. And the Second Amendment is cited as you try to do your job to keep guns from essentially bringing down the government of an ally. Now, when it comes to Mexico, let me ask you, what kind of gun control laws does Mexico have? Any of you know about their gun control laws? Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Yes, sir. Would you speak up?
Civilians could buy nothing greater than a .38 caliber. Anything after that is for the exclusive use of the military and the police.
So here is Mexico, who does its job on its side of the border. It says you essentially, it makes it very difficult for anyone except someone in law enforcement or the military to get a gun. So they come to the United States, where trafficking is wide open. And let me ask you this. We are concentrating on Mexico now. Let me ask you about trafficking to Chicago. Let me ask you about traveling to the District of Columbia, to Baltimore. Let me ask you about trafficking to LA. Do these same traffickers operate as effectively in our country as we have now seen them operate, taking guns to Mexico?
I believe that the organizations are a little bit different. That's why I said earlier about we've never encountered an organization like this for Mexico. The trafficking in the U.S., my experience anyway, is a little bit different. It's a little bit more association related, but obviously trafficking domestically is a major issue for us, and I spent the majority of my career working those kind of cases.
If a person, let's say, buys 200 guns, and here you made mistakes. If I had $1 for every mistake this Congress has made when it came to guns, I'd be a very rich woman. You made a mistake. It was a fatal mistake. It was a mistake for which you are being held accountable. Let's say you hadn't made a mistake, that someone without a record bought guns. That's me. You found me with 200 guns. What could you do to me?
Nothing at all, ma'am.
Did you feel disarmed in your fight against this wholesale movement of guns from our country to Mexico? Or did you feel you were equipped to, in fact, by law enforcement to do what was necessary?
Yeah, I think my experience, ATF agents are very resilient. You have to be to make the case, and that's what our people do, and they do that every day, and they're out there doing that today.
And they may design tactics to try to make them, to make themselves more effective on the ground.
I think that's what we should always be doing, yes.
Could I ask each of you, would you feel better able to stop this traffic if the Congress passed a law that made it and added to our criminal code a section that prohibited the transfer of a gun when an individual knows the gun will be transferred to a person who is prohibited from carrying a gun or intends to actually use the gun illegally?
we currently do have a statute that does handle that. That's the whole lying on the federal form violation.
So, but lying on the federal form gets you to where?
Gets us to, if we can prove that someone knowingly filled out that form incorrectly or lied.
Can you seize guns? We've been talking about seizures here. In order to seize guns, what does the ATF have to show?
That a violation of laws are committed with that firearm.
Well, I'm back to
The gentlelady's time has expired, but if anyone else wants to answer the question on what's known,
I'm back to what's the law that's been violated?
if anyone else wants to answer.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that that firearm was in some way used in violation of furtherance of violation of a crime or in violation of a crime. We can't just go out and randomly seize firearms from individuals. Firearms are in themselves not contraband. If we stop someone on the street with 5 AKs, 10 AKs, 20 AKs,
Or 100 AKs.
or 100, and they're not prohibited, as frustrating as that may be, and believe me, it's extremely frustrating, but as frustrating as that may be, we may not have any legal ability to seize those firearms.